Makes sense. We understand it. We are still about that. This is still about that. We speak, live, we breathe death. But lest we suffer from homophily and be too data-centric, I want to talk a little bit, actually I don't have a clicker, I want to talk a little bit about some of the, I knew I was forgetting something. I want to talk a little bit about the rest of the world, the rest of the country, and how they might start acting on some of this stuff. How are we supposed to translate this? How are we supposed to move it from something that happens here, from something that we understand, to something that they get too? So I want to start by going down the coast of California, but to something of another world, to Garden Grove, California. So Garden Grove is a one of the towns, one of the kind of the sprawl of Orange County. And in 2003, Garden Grove decided they recognized they had a problem that a lot of cities in this country have. They have a lot of people speeding. And they had a lot of people speeding in school zones. They couldn't get people to slow down in those 24-mile-an-hour zones. So what they did in Garden Grove was they did various experiments. They put up new speed limit signs, bigger speed limit signs. That didn't really work. They tried to actually re-engineer the streets and narrow the streets where they could. That didn't work. They couldn't do it everywhere. They especially couldn't do it in front of schools. They stationed cops in front of the school zones. And whenever possible, wanted to give out tickets whenever they could get the cops to show up and write point there. And that worked here or there, but the cops couldn't be there all the time, and so it didn't really reduce the speed of the traffic. So what they did in Garden Grove was they put these things in. They put these driver feedback signs in, right? These are the signs that have popped up all over the place. These are known, we also know them as the your speed is signs. And these things started to work. They started to get people to slow down a lot. In fact, they slowed down, the schools experienced slow down from about 10 to 15% on average the average speed. In fact, the average speed of the drivers dropped below the speed limit. Think about that. They were actually going under the speed limit. Think about that word, limit. So it was great. It was this transformative technology. They had it was in fact, as Chris Anderson was saying, and as Chris Hall was saying, it's a sensor inside it, it's a radar sensor, it detects how fast cars are going. And because radar technology, like all these other technologies, are getting cheaper and cheaper, they were able to stick them all over the place, stick them in front of these fly schools, and they were able to affect people's behavior. So it worked really well. But why did it work? Why did it work? How many people here have a car? How many people have a car? Okay. Now, how many of those same people have a speedometer in their car? Okay, pretty much the same number. Good. Some of you didn't raise your hands. I don't know what you're driving. This was redundant information, right? It's information you already had. That's already in front of you all the time. Why did these signs that merely reminded people how fast they were going, which they already knew if they wanted to know, why did they seem to work? The second thing that's interesting about these signs is that they weren't using the radar technology in the way it was usually used or had been used. Which is in the hands of the police officer, right? When it's in the hands of the police officer, you know when you go by and you're going 32 in a 25-mile-an-hour school zone, you're probably busted, right? You're probably going to get a ticket. Now, all of a sudden, these things, that same technology, and took the punitive measure out of it, and somehow they still work. And they still work today. They actually are still there working. In fact, just last year, I was talking to the city traffic engineer of Garden Grove last week. And he said they've installed 10 new radar feedback signs around the city because they work so well. And that's a phenomenon that's happening all over the country. People or municipalities are installing these things all over the place. So what we have is people using data. We have the living by numbers phenomenon. We have the feedback loop phenomenon happening all over the world, all over the city, all over the country, in ways that people don't really think about it as this kind of new high-tech installation. It's just kind of sewn into the fabric of our lives. It's part of our daily experience now. So you've seen a few feedback loops, and I'm sorry I'm giving you the last feedback loop today. But this is how, when I talk about feedback loops, kind of the way I think about it, through these four components. You get an evidence layer, you get a relevance layer, you get a consequences layer, and then you need to take action. So these things work as almost perfect feedback loops. So the evidence is the data is that the speed limit is 25, and you're going faster than that. We always are. So the consequences are pretty clear too. Slow down or else. Or else, it's a little vague what the or else is here. It's not exactly that fear that you're going to get a ticket, but when you talk to people, actually, they're never really sure whether or not these things are actually hooked up to some sort of super board in the police headquarters. They aren't. Let me just tell you, they're not. I talked to the city traffic engineer, and he said, we never even thought of that. So all of you can run these things from now on. But the action is also really clear. The action, you have to take that action right now. You see that sign, and you know now is the time to lift your foot off the pedal, slow down, and you're all set. Right? So that's feedback. That's how they work. They work really well. So the thing is, the fact that these things are out there, that they're kind of trickling into our environment, is in some ways odd. In some ways, if you look at it as pure data, it's kind of, there's sensors, there's technology. But in another way, it's part of the way we talk about our lives anyway, right? Everything from Socrates making this rather than for Pete thing, it's kind of feedback loop. Not really, it's really just a way to clean your hair. But all these other things, right? We think about, we talk in these terms anyway. This is a normal way to talk. We talk in terms of how we learn things, we repeat, we learn from our mistakes. These are feedback loops. This is using data, using information. It's putting these same ideas into motion. So it's not some other language. It's not some foreign kind of dialogue with that only Silicon Valley can get. This is how we learn. This is how we learn as people. Mitch Capel was talking about this stuff. Tim Riley was talking about this stuff in terms of education, in terms of learning. Right? This is so into kind of the way we think about learning, the way we think about education, the way we think about how we're going to get better anyway at this. It's simply making it a little bit more explicit. It's making it into a nice little loop. It's a nice graphic. So I want to give another example outside of Silicon Valley, also down in Southern California. This is John Wooden. He was the legendary coach at UCLA. He was the most successful basketball coach in NCAA history. I should say male basketball coach in NCAA history. He won 10 championships. He had an unprecedented ring of 7 in a row, and he was obviously really good at his job. And luckily, he was also it's curious now, he was an English professor. In addition to being a college coach, he also taught English, so he was interested in learning. So when a couple psychiatrists and another professor from the Department of Education at UCLA asked Coach Wooden if they could observe him in the 1974-1975 season, he said, sure, come to the practice, see how I coach. You're welcome to kind of make sense of my method. And so, not only was it, there were several reasons why it was a really good year. One is because it was Coach Wooden's last year, and it was his 10th championship year, right? So he was doing everything right yet again, and it was the last time he would ever be able to study his method. The other reason it was good to study Coach Wooden was because he was really, really methodical about the way he worked. He had a 2-hour basketball practice every day, and he would spend 2 hours every morning going through the practice, planning the practice with his coaches. And they carved it up into 5 minutes or less chunks. And they would put it all on index cards. And on these index cards were exactly the little things that he was going to do instead. So they do 5 minutes passing drills, and then the next 5 minutes would be running relays, whatever it was. However you learn how to teach people how to play basketball, he had it carved into little units. And so he talked about he'd go back 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and tell you exactly how he ran that practice 5, 10 years ago, because he had it on index cards. He knew exactly what worked and what wouldn't work. He also planned exactly what he was going to tell his players in those practices. So it was all the kind of chatter, all the feedback he was going to give the players was actually not all that spontaneous. But one of the other things that he talked about, the way he did talk, the way he talked to his students or his players, was he was very strict and clear. He would talk for no more than 20 seconds, usually in 5 to 10 second bursts. He would say, pass the ball more, run faster, just little clips. He wouldn't really, he almost gave no feedback in the way we think about feedback in terms of praise or scolding. That was almost not his pattern at all. There was only about 10% of the things he talked about were kind of praise or scolding. Most of it, 50%, were these quick little things. And there was this other category, about 25%, what they called woodens. It was such a unique way of giving people feedback. It was don't do this, do that. It was this kind of quick corrective and then a direction. Those were woodens. So what's neat about this, what was neat about this research, was they realized that he was being so rigorous in how he gave feedback. He was creating feedback loops within feedback loops within feedback loops for his players. And so that's how you want to teach people. You want to be the best basketball coach for the best team in college history, right? So that's how you teach at the best in that level. So that's one level of teaching, and his coaches or his players would kind of talk about this experience as being transformative, not just on the basketball court, but for their whole lives. I mean, these players like Freeman and Bar. And they said things like this. They said things like, he helped me be a better me. And that's wonderful, right? So Ben and one of Coach Wooden's players must have been a singular experience. But what we're getting to now is this new way of engaging with information, with data, where we can create Coach Wooden-like environments and all take advantage of this. It can scale. These ideas can now scale because of everything you've heard of today, because of the sensors, because of the global brain. These are things that everybody can take advantage of. Now again, one of the reasons why, one of the things I want to insist on today is how this is not all that unusual, how this is not normal. This is the way we function as humans. This is the way we function as creatures. There's this, you learned about homophily earlier. There's another nice Latin word, homeostasis, which is basically this theory that biological organisms try to revert to a norm, and they kind of are always kind of have these internal stabilizing mechanisms. And that's true with us as human beings, as biological organisms, but also it's true in the way we function with information. We want to achieve stability, we want to keep things in balance. Evolution itself, natural selection, mutations, those are feedback loops. So these things are playing on our intrinsic cellular nature. They're not unfamiliar. They're not foreign principles. This is how we're built. This is who we are as animals. So data is just a way of catalyzing those mechanisms, a way of turning those mechanisms and priming them and taking advantage of the way we already operate. The key here, though, is that for everybody else to understand it, for everybody else to take advantage of it, the data has to disappear. For the rest of the world, for the rest of the planet, as we build on these ideas, we have to stop putting the data forward and saying that's all we need. It isn't just about that. We need to create the tools, we need to create the maps, we need to do what they're doing at STEAM and design, in terms of creating ways of giving people the information, giving people access to the information, in a way that changes the way they think about their lives without having to get into the numbers. Right now we're in this kind of dashboard-centric world. Right? You've seen a lot of dashboards today. I actually had to take a couple slides of dashboards out. You didn't overwhelmed. But the whole objective here is not to give people dashboards. It's to eliminate dashboards. It's to really go to the kind of thing that Green Boost is doing, right? Where it's just kind of integrated, and if we want to play games, we can play games. However, whatever the triggers are for making these things relevant and compelling to people, those are what we need to find. That's where we need to really find the kind of mechanism that data puts in the mechanism and the operation that data starts. Data is just the beginning point. So that's really what I want to leave with you today. Is that if we're talking about living by numbers, which is an essential concept, an essential way of thinking about what our opportunity is as technologists, as a society, but ultimately it's not about the numbers. It's about the living part. And the more we emphasize the living, and the less we pay attention to the numbers, that's how I think we should really judge success or failure. Thank you very much.